During the last 9 months of 1987, a British company, Wordplex, fell prey to 3 attempts to take it over. The final attempt was successful.
We've got a clean break, and that happens at 10 o'clock, but they've obviously asked me to do a number of things in the future for them, and I've said I've remained uncommitted until I see how they operate really and how it goes. But I've obviously put words in the right ears, hopefully, to try and set it up in the way that we were thinking. But it's really up to them now. It's their company.
This is the story of that takeover, filmed as it took place. It follows the lives of several of Wordplex's employees through that troubled time as they prospered, survived, or were sacked.
The outstanding shareholders, and you say to them, look, in a month's time, your shares are going to be compulsorily acquired.
Wordplex manufactures word processors. The company was floated on the UK Stock Exchange in 1984, and by 1985 boasted an impressive list of clients, including a couple of high street banks and many law firms. Indulging its high-tech image to the full, the company took over a glass palace in Slough, where it confidently manufactured a complete range of word processors. A plant-filled atrium greeted prospective customers.
Good afternoon, Wordplex Information Systems.
But soon after moving in, things began to go wrong. Wordplex expanded overseas, assuming that this would increase their sales. But the competition was too fierce, and the sales failed to materialize. Wordplex slipped from profit into loss. Attempts to turn the company round became more and more desperate. 2 new boards of directors came and went in rapid succession. The executive corridor came to be known as Death Row. The story begins in May 1987, when a new man was recruited to run Wordplex and took up his seat on that fatal corridor. Dr. Jeff Bristow had recently set himself up as a high-tech troubleshooter. His first task in his new job was simple: to take on Wordplex's problems and win.
Money, the company is currently 270% geared, which means effectively that the banks who have lent the money own the company and control the company. Well, obviously there are short-term financial objectives, but I think the best objective that I'd like to set myself is that in 5 years' time, I'd like everybody in the UK who spends their working lives generating documents, I'd like them to associate with the Wordplex name as the supplier of the highest quality goods, but more particularly services, that will enable them to do their job better.
And what happens if you don't succeed?
Well, I don't really think you expect us to admit the possibility of not succeeding. I don't believe we will fail. We might well change the goalpost slightly, but we will succeed.
Bristow's short-term strategy involved revitalizing the finances and the morale of the company. He started by holding a series of meetings to introduce himself to a workforce who were growing weary of the sight of new chief executives.
Today, Jeff Bristow is going to give us a presentation on ideas for the company and the future of the company. Jeff Bristow. Thank you, David.
I suppose the first thing to say is pleased to see you all. Where have the car park signs gone in Slough? Who knows the Slough building? Who knows the car park signs that used to be there? Who knows they're not there anymore? The signs that said Chairman, Group Managing Director, Group Marketing Director, Group Personnel Director, Group everybody else. And 9 times out of 10 when you turned up, there were only 2 cars in that string. I think there were probably 15 or 20 spaces. Everybody else in the car park jamming to get in. And the first time I turned up, I must admit, I drove round and round in circles looking for the visitors' spots. And you find them, if you go and look, you find them. They are at the far corner of the car park with a tiny little sign that you just about miss. Now, to me, that said, the priorities for the company were as follows. Number 1, the directors. Number 2, the staff. And number 3, the customers. Now, I'm sure it'll be music to your ears. I hope it'll be music to your ears. The priorities have got to be the other way round. Customers have to come number 1. Then, of course, the staff come next, because it's the staff that are actually going to make the profit. And then come the things like the hierarchy and the directors and the board. The board have got to be working through the staff to the customers. And if I ever come across anything which implies that we haven't been treating the customers as number one, then I'll want to know about it immediately, and you can guess what will happen.
Do you regard your position as chief executive as permanent position, or have you predefined some length of service that you're going to put in?
I'm always going to be here running the company, but there are different things we could do with the management structure at the very top level, and I don't want to preempt that, and it's time will tell. But I will always be with the company for the foreseeable future, and I hope to make some money out of it, because I left ICL and TI in order to set up a business, and I had to hook my house up to the roof to do it. And I now expect to make some money if Wordplex does.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Super.
I'm sure everyone appreciates it.
Well, as they say on Hill Street Blues, let's do it to them before they do it to us.
But Bristow's tactics weren't universally popular. Some managers, like Paul Smith, felt that they had long kept their sections of Wordplex profitable without the help of Jeff Bristow. They resented being scrutinised.
At our first meeting, the UK management team were told that they would have to justify their jobs. I think like a lot of people, I found that offensive because we just waded our way through one of the best fights recently and had survived. I mean, we were in a company that had been selling an underfeatured, overpriced product range for years and making a profit. And that is the UK company we're making a profit. And we were very successful, very tough. And yeah, I found that very difficult.
But soon Jeff Bristow himself ran into difficulties. In his attempt to raise the cash to save Wordplex, he made a tactical mistake. He proposed that a consortium led by Citibankers Close Brothers should be allowed to buy 1/4 of Wordplex. Bristow believed that the shareholders wouldn't object, as Wordplex was in so much trouble. After all, there was no sign that anyone else would invest in the company. But he was wrong. The first City journalist to make the war of the Wordplex shareholders public was the Independent's Claire Doby. Sensing a good story, she rang up American bankers Chase Manhattan, who she knew were watching Wordplex.
But I hadn't quite realised that Chase were not just the experts, but also interested parties. They had bought for clients 20% of the company in recent months, knew it well, were very interested in it, and had very firm views on the Bristow refinancing package.
What were those views?
They were very critical from the start, as soon as they saw them. They'd heard nothing about them in advance. They really didn't like the idea that their 20% shareholding, or rather the 20% of the company held by their clients, would be effectively diluted to, say, 10% by the issue of extra shares. And their shareholders were being asked to cough up money, to inject cash, to refinance the company, rather than be given cash by someone taking over the company, which Chase thought was possible.
It was argued later by some of Bristow's supporters that Chase's very public opposition brought about the collapse of the Bristow plan.
They brought attention to its weaknesses. They couldn't have done it on their own. They couldn't have ruined it all on their own, but they did highlight its deficiencies. It was a valid argument they were putting forward. It was very well worthwhile reporting. As it happened, what they said actually influenced the course of events. Another company came in, APRICOT came in with a bid.
On the 8th of June, APRICOT Computers of Birmingham issued a bid for Wordplex of 130p a share. Wordplex's shareholders sensed that their shares weren't as worthless as they'd been led to believe, and voted down Bristow's plan.
What went wrong?
Well, I think that things went right, actually. I think things went right for the shareholders, and I believe that things will have gone right for the staff as well. I have two basic responsibilities as Chief Executive of the company. One is to the shareholders, and one is to the staff. And the shareholders obviously want to see the very best value for the company in terms of the share price. And what has actually happened here is that we've generated a strategy for the company. We've proved the company is actually worth something. We put together a set of refinancing proposals where previously it was not possible at all. and as a result, we flashed out a takeover bid. Now, I think for the shareholders, that's very good. For the staff, that's where I now need to turn my attention clearly, because I want to make sure that they benefit from it as well.
It was also a tense time for Roger Foster, APRICOT's chief executive. APRICOT is one of the few British computer manufacturers to have survived the cutthroat competition of the 80s. At times, APRICOT had been living from hand to mouth, exposed to the ups and downs of the personal computer market, but Foster had turned it round. Now he desperately wanted Wordplex's large, rich customer base to give his empire stability. But Foster had a full month to wait until the 10th of July to see if a majority of Wordplex shareholders would accept his offer.
Okay.
And while he waited, Wordplex was without new orders, strapped for cash, and falling into an even steeper decline. Shortages caused confusion and chaos in manufacturing, where it was a battle to produce just a single complete machine.
We've had a number of material shortages which we've had to handle. And one of the classics to demonstrate what can happen with a material shortage is if you take a keyboard. We see here that the number 2 is actually missing because we've got all the keycaps except the number 2, which for one reason or another we failed to get. And the cost of that individual cap is probably about 10 pence. The absence of that 10p cap means we can't ship this keyboard. The keyboard is absolutely fundamental to a word processor, so we can't ship the terminal, which includes the processor and everything else, and that means that we might be also unable to ship a huge 60-70,000 pound order just for the absence of one single keycap. The sort of problems we've had in shortages have introduced a culture here which says, if I've got a shortage, let's repair it to keep my production line going. And I must commend my people for that attitude. But what they're really doing is firefighting. They're not actually solving the root cause of the problem. They're solving the symptom, which is something's gone wrong today, let's solve it, rather than get it back to where it's really gone wrong, which is at our supplier.
The culture of firefighting left everyone in manufacturing longing for stability.
Would you yourself welcome yet another change of management?
I'd rather not comment on that question at the moment. I believe my job is to manage this unit, manage it effectively.
The uncertainty over the company's future was beginning to seep down to the shop floor, although most workers chose not to worry until they heard the worst.
Because we haven't been told anything. I've still got a job, so I'm not too worried at the moment.
You just don't think about it until you know exactly what's going to happen. I mean, there are a lot of rumours, but that doesn't mean to say anything has happened as yet. So we'll just wait and see, I think.
So you're keeping your nose to the grindstone?
Pretty much so, yeah.
The staff are a little bit unsettled by the whole situation because it's very difficult to stick your nose down to the grindstone if you don't actually know where that grindstone's going to go over the next 3 or 4 weeks, which direction the company's actually going to go in. I think we've built up a tremendous feeling of emotion for the company. It knows what it's hoping to achieve. We just need one last thing to happen, that is the extraordinary general meeting of APRICOT to approve the offer, the shareholders to approve the offer, which is only 2 to 3 weeks out, and that uncertainty will be off the table.
The lifeblood of a company is its customers, and the prolonged uncertainty had taken its toll on them. The large London law firm, Linklaters and Paynes, decided to change from Wordplex equipment to machines made by the American company Wang, losing Wordplex a £1 million order. Indeed, Wang's salesmen were quick to take advantage of Wordplex's difficulties.
Every time any of our sales managers went into major potential orders, they were offered the dossier from this leading American company, which was a very professional documentation of all the problems the company had had in terms of its external financing, the difficulties in profitability in 1985. And the whole basis was to try and make people very insecure about Wordplex and its future.
The arrival of the deadline by which Wordplex's shareholders had to decide on the APRICOT offer could have brought an end to the uncertainty, but it didn't. It was a disappointed Roger Foster who gathered with key members of his board in Birmingham. 8 days before APRICOT's deadline, Norwegian computer makers Norsk Data launched a surprise bid from their headquarters near Newbury. It upstaged APRICOT's offer by a massive 25p per share.
Has your Norwegian?
By 10:30 that morning, it was clear that APRICOT wouldn't match the Norwegian offer of 155p per share, and were preparing to watch their bid collapse.
We've considered very carefully with our advisors whether to increase our offer to provide Wordplex shareholders with better terms than those offered by Norsk Data. We have taken into account, 1, the continued deterioration in the current trading position of Wordplex as the period of uncertainty over its future has been extended. 2, the fact that APRICOT's own trading position continues to improve with favourable and stable prospects. 3, the price originally offered by APRICOT is believed by us to have valued very fully the troubled Wordplex business. We've therefore decided with regret that it is in APRICOT shareholders' interest not to increase our offer. Today is also the closing date, and we will be announcing the level of acceptances later in the day.
A decisive factor in Foster's decision not to raise APRICOT's bid was the deteriorating state of Wordplex.
Well, I think it was one of the things that in the end decided us in the past few days not to increase our offer further, was the fact that delays are occurring. There was the original proposals for restructuring them, followed by the APRICOT offer, and now followed by the Norsk offer. And had we counter-offered, then so it goes on, and these things can drag on over several months. It already has, as you know, gone on for 2 months. In that 2-month period, our reading of the Wordplex situation is that it is effectively falling off the end of a cliff in terms of sales. Customers are totally confused. There's great uncertainty. And up to a certain point, that is acceptable. I think it's gone beyond the point of acceptability now. And we were beginning to wonder that if it was going to take us another 6 weeks to get it, or 8 weeks, and if it was going to cost us many millions more, then what was it we were going to get when we finally got it?
Have you done a copy yet?
But news of Norsk's offer, valuing Wordplex at an astonishing £16 million, produced an atmosphere of euphoria among the managers who had seen Wordplex through its darkest days. On the day in which it became clear that a majority of Wordplex's shareholders had accepted the Norsk offer, Wordplex's managing committee decided to celebrate with a T-shirt party.
The object of the exercise was not to spear APRICOT. The object of the exercise was to get a good, secure financial future for the company. And APRICOT wouldn't have been as good as Norsk Data. That's why we're all happy with this outcome. But nevertheless, they would have been a great deal better than receivership. But that was, I thought, an extremely nice thought. I've always had a theme of T-shirts, I must say, because we got you. I always knew a Norwegian would. Terribly comedy.
Brackets and did.
But not everybody was quite so optimistic. Roger, I think, slightly more pessimistic at times, but didn't ever believe they'd actually really pay the price, which they did. So we've got you Manny Fjord old rope. And they get worse.
I didn't think they could do. Don't want to be the last one if they get worse.
Afraid you are, actually. Now, John, of course, is the guy that's handled probably the worst problems we've had in terms of always turning a corner and always finding something else there. Trying to climb up the slope and always sliding back again. But he made it. So we've got you. Wordplex managers do it on slippery slopes. Hopefully when you get to Oslo, you'll be able to practice.
By then, the managers of Wordplex knew that they were certain to have a new board of directors by the next day. Those present who were on the main Wordplex board prepared to hand in their resignations.
Everybody knows, I think, the state of play regarding the Norsk Data bid, but Steve's just come back from Wales. We'll go over it. 71.5% was what they actually got yesterday at 3 p.m. Now that includes the 11% that they originally had. That's actually quite a significant number. Tony and I had a few panics when we thought it might be just over 50%. or even just under 50% at one time.
I think in a nutshell, it's not unusual what's happened. In fact, the level of acceptances was at 71.2 is jolly good. You know, it's very encouraging for Norsk.
So we will actually all resign except Tony at 9:45, and then we will be appointing the other directors as well. So by the time we actually have a meeting at 10 o'clock with the senior, the first two levels of management, our management forum, then we'll actually have had the board meeting and we'll be actually handing over control. And that'll be the chance when I can actually introduce the four main players from Norsk Data who we've been working with over a period of time. Their feeling, I believe, is about the middle of next week they really ought to be able to make some clear statements about the management structure and in terms of the location, Newbury and Slough especially.
Well, it removes the uncertainty, doesn't it? And that's the most important thing of all. From the average person, I think, on the shop floor and everybody else down out in the field, it removes the enormous question mark about whether the company is going to survive or not.
But despite all they had done to save Wordplex from bankruptcy, many of those around the table were nervous that Norsk might not continue to employ them. They were right to be. Of the 9 managers present that day, only 4 were to survive the takeover. Jeff Bristow had already decided to quit, believing that a clean break was best for himself and Wordplex.
So I think it's pretty well tied up. I should be watching from afar there, don't worry.
Down the road.
Yeah. In the long barn or somewhere to see how it gets on.
So might some of us.
Half an hour after tendering their resignations, the former directors of Wordplex returned to their old boardroom to hear what the new owners had in store for them.
One question which I might as well put on the table right away is the location. Norsk Data is located in Newbury, and you have your headquarters here in Slough. The current planning is that we intend to move some of the operation to Newbury. This building we will probably put on the market very soon, but many of the functions we intend to move to Newbury and integrate it with the Norsk Data group in Newbury. We feel that is the most effective way of doing it.
I suspect that most people would like the decision-making process to start quickly.
Yeah.
And any uncertainties to be resolved quickly.
Jeff Bristow resigned and left the building that day. The staff of Wordplex were left to face the future under yet another new management, and to find out which of them would survive the takeover.
I fully realize, as it also has been mentioned before here today, that you must have been through a difficult time, traumatic situation for quite a period. And also the situation we had early this summer must have been not too pleasant for you as working in this company. I fully understand that. I hope that that situation is behind us now. Now the situation is more clear. You will now be a part of the Norsk Data group.
This is the story of the takeover of a company, filmed as it took place.
Norsk Data is located in Newbury, and you have your headquarters here in Slough. This building we will probably put on the market very soon.
The story began in May 1987 when high-tech troubleshooter Dr. Jeff Bristow was called in to try to save Wordplex, a British manufacturer of word processors. The Slough-based company had got into trouble after it overestimated the demand for its products and overstretched itself at the bank. Bristow put together a plan to inject new capital and a new strategy into a company which was in desperate need of both.
Today, Jeff Bristow is going to give us a presentation. Jeff Bristow. Thank you, David.
Although the staff were growing weary of the sight of new chief executives, many believed that Bristow was their last hope.
I'm always going to be here running the company, but there are different things we could do with the management structure at the very top level, and I don't want to preempt that, and as time will tell. But I will always be with the company for the foreseeable future.
But the foreseeable future, in Bristow's case, was to be less than 3 months. Bristow's plan ran into trouble when a group of shareholders led by Chase Manhattan Bank objected to the way in which the Bristow plan reduced their stake in Wordplex. They looked for an outside bidder and found one in APRICOT, a Birmingham-based computer manufacturer. But just 8 days before Wordplex shareholders had to take or leave APRICOT's offer, there was an even higher bid from Norwegian computer manufacturers Norsk Data. From their sumptuous headquarters near Newbury, Norsk had assembled a bid which upstaged APRICOT's offer by a massive 25p per share. APRICOT decided not to compete, and their bid collapsed.
The price originally offered by APRICOT is believed by us to have valued very fully the troubled Wordplex business. We've therefore decided with regret that it is in APRICOT shareholders' interest not to increase our offer.
By mid-July, Wordplex was starved of cash and feeling the effects of months of uncertainty. Both management and staff were weary from the hard fight for survival. So when it became clear that the Norsk offer would go ahead, valuing Wordplex at an astonishing £16 million, Wordplex's managers had cause to celebrate.
Brackets business unit manager. So, thought, right.
We're getting down to the normal level again, aren't we?
I thought, well, I'm not...
common denominator.
But this respite was short-lived. At the handover meeting between Wordplex's managers and Norsk Data, it became plain that changes were imminent.
Obviously, Norsk Data today has the management control of Wordplex. And we intend to make Wordplex a wholly owned subsidiary of Norsk Data.
I suspect most of the questions that people want to ask you couldn't give answers to, but I also suspect that most people would like the decision-making process to start quickly, and any uncertainties to be resolved quickly.
Yes, certainly that's our intention too. And as I said, we have been limited to the kind of factual information we have been able to receive. So, but our intention is certainly to try to inform as soon as things become concrete.
Confidentially, Bristow suspected that redundancies would soon follow.
There's a lot of dead wood still, clearly, which we recognised, but one can't do anything about without having the cash to do it. So I think they need to clear out the deadwood quickly, get the good people promoted into good jobs, give everybody a job description knowing exactly what they're doing, and get on with it.
When you say deadwood, you're talking about people?
Oh, well, yes, of course. I mean, any company that has been wandering through the industry for a couple of years will have lost some good people, probably won't have lost some of the bad people, not as good at a particular job. They'll have some round pegs in square holes and square pegs in round holes. And some of them would have to go, clearly.
Jeff Bristow then resigned as chief executive of Wordplex and left the company under the control of its new owners.
It's really up to them now, it's their company.
Norsk Data was then a massively rich company, deriving most of its profits from computer sales in Scandinavia. But despite the amount of money it had to spend on its UK headquarters, Norsk hadn't managed to translate gracious living into a large British customer base. Buying Wordplex was a way of acquiring a strong list of customers and Wordplex's tough marketing team.
It is very difficult to break into a marketplace from the outside. To have a foothold in the door in our type of industry is a great advantage. Wordplex has some first-class customers here in the UK. We also believe that the UK company as such, the sales organization, the support organization, is good, solid, well managed, and that we can use that organization to build on for the future.
But Norsk had bought Wordplex's problems as well as its assets. Wordplex customers complained about the difficulty of getting hold of Wordplex engineers when their machines broke down.
Finish and leave 12:15.
Not only was maintenance scarce, but many customers found it too expensive. But making money out of maintenance was a policy which successive managements of Wordplex had pursued, including Jeff Bristow's.
It's just like the old Gillette razor blade business, where Gillette actually sold the razor at very low profit in order to be able to sell razor blades over and over again over years. Well, the computer industry has been doing exactly the same trick for really quite a long time. It sells products, and those products may make some money, but not half as much money as the company can actually make then by looking after the customer over a long period of time, maintaining the equipment, providing consultancy when it's necessary, supporting, training, and so on.
Wordplex's customers made their view of this strategy clear at a meeting of the Wordplex Users Association just 2 weeks after Norsk had taken over.
My director is very conscious of the high cost of Wordplex maintenance, and he's indicated that he may well put an alternative system in.
Yep.
I was speaking to the Wordplex representative, and he said, well, maintenance is negotiable. So there is certainly an amount of negotiation that can be achieved with the Wordplex maintenance charge.
Yep.
But this is all the salesman's talk, and it's a case of getting it down in writing.
Right. Screw what you can out of them.
Yeah. Well, obviously they're not going to give free maintenance if they can avoid it.
But the Wordplex users soon discovered that they had an even more fundamental problem in common. Calls for assistance went through to a help desk in Slough, where a customer's call should have been answered in seconds. That was the theory, but not apparently the practice.
Yeah, we had an all-day ring up at intervals for the whole day and just couldn't raise an answer. The phone was ringing, but nobody would answer it. But she couldn't raise anything at the help desk at all.
Anybody else used a help desk in the last few months?
APTA National Training Board, we've only attempted to use it once in the last month, couldn't get through, so we phoned another department to get our answer, but we didn't use the help desk in the end. We just couldn't get hold of the reply to the phone.
Right, thank you.
It's engaged all the time.
Lady?
The time I did get through, they couldn't actually help me. They said they'd get back to me, which they never. I had to ring them again the following day,
right.
And still I couldn't get an answer to my questions.
Your company, dear?
TSB Trust Company.
TSB. Anybody else used a help desk? Yes.
When it first started, someone would answer the phone, there would be no complete silence, and this would go on for time after time.
They
Eventually,
didn't even play you music?
not even a suggestion music. And eventually I phoned up the supervisor and said what was going on, and they were a little bit disconcerted to find that they had acquired a practice of actually doing that without actually saying anything to the customer.
After lunch, the Wordplex users were joined by representatives of Norsk Data, who found themselves fielding questions about the help desk.
Well, I think the best statement that I could give to you is following the acquisition of Wordplex, Norsk Data are in the process of reviewing all operations and assessing the benefit of all operations, and that does include the help desk. It's acknowledged that the quality of service currently being offered by the help desk is not acceptable. We do understand that. In the short term, we are ensuring that staffing levels are maintained and that the telephone response times are reduced.
Right. I'm sure we would welcome a presentation on the customer service from Norsk Data, and we can talk about that at greater length. I notice with some amusement that the Norsk Data User Association is called No Cuss, N-O-C-U-S, which is...
Does that mean no customers or no swearing?
I don't think we could be members of that. Right, on.
The meeting confirmed Norsk's belief that the best way to keep Wordplex's valuable customer base was to keep the sections of Wordplex which most appealed to its customers. One of these was Wordplex's much-admired marketing department. So, less than a month later, Wordplex's marketing staff were moved from Slough to Norsk's headquarters near Newbury. Spearheading the exodus were Peter Miles and Phil Scrace, both expert at hanging on to customers through thick and thin.
Thank you very much.
They captured the pick of the office space and set about reinforcing their positions. But they soon found that Wordplex's culture of selling to stay solvent was very much in contrast with the relaxed atmosphere at Norsk.
Would you describe your style as more go-getting and aggressive?
Possibly,
Definitely.
yeah, possibly.
Definitely.
They're very technical, their sales force, but it's an easy approach they have, whereas our sales force are go out, get orders, and get the business.
Norsk Data had a reputation as being a very loving and caring kind of company, more relaxed in the way in which it was managed. Management more by consensus. Wordplex had its own culture, which was a very vital, electric kind of culture. The style was quite assertive. And bearing in mind the difficulties that Wordplex had gone through, an enormous amount of comradeship, a lot of self-esteem as well. But I think in any two companies where you're trying to integrate cultures, you're going to have these kinds of difficulties. I would say it was quite marked with Wordplex and Norsk Data, and perhaps not enough attention was paid to understanding that problem.
Norsk's next step in their fight to hold on to Wordplex's customers was to deal with the problem of the help desk.
What you need to do is set that constant figure into register B and then add A and B.
Working on the help desk, Leslie Miles had developed an intimate knowledge of Wordplex's machines.
That's all right. Well, you transfer it into A just the same as you did to B, and then it'll be in both.
Help desk staff argued that the failure of Wordplex customers to train their staff resulted in help desk lines becoming blocked with panicking callers.
And then when you get to where you want that constant figure, 3.36, which is in B, you subtract that from A, and that'll give you your new total, right? And then you minus 14% from A. So it should work.
But Norsk didn't think that it was worth hanging on to the help desk staff in Slough and made an offer which caused them all to look for jobs elsewhere.
I don't think they were actually going to change the salary, and the others that I worked with, the problem that they had was that they had a company car and they were going to lose that when they went to Newbury because the job didn't allow for company cars. So in the long run they would have been a lot worse off. They would have had further to travel and it would have been under their own steam.
Leslie Miles had had a special deal with Wordplex which gave the kind of flexible hours which allowed her to take care of her son. Norsk weren't interested in continuing this and didn't renew her contract. She feels that Norsk just didn't understand the importance of experienced help desk staff.
They didn't really take the time to come in. If they'd have spent perhaps a week or a fortnight in there with us and seen exactly what went on from day-to-day routine, then I think they would have got a lot better idea about how much work was involved in there. But in fact, when we did get somebody to come down, one girl came down for a day. How they're coping now, I'm afraid I don't know. I haven't asked.
Do you think they'll live to regret it?
I hope so. I do hope so, because I think there was a good team there. I think everybody got on well, and sometimes the job did get on top of you, but we all struggled through. And I think that you can't always bring that back. If you employ another lot of people, they're not necessarily going to get on as well.
There is a market rate for the job. It was the rate they were being paid in Slough. Regrettably, from their point of view, we've now moved the company 50 miles. We cannot sort of make a salary accommodation for that 50-mile travelling without creating all sorts of anomalies around other people.
Steve Bennett himself came from Wordplex. He had proved to be a loyal and useful employee to Norsk, switching with ease to the new strategy.
The whole instinct of the acquisition is that the UK is a prime marketplace, and I'm sorry if I'm stealing your line, sir.
Bennett's rise was to be rapid. Norsk had watched the clash of company cultures and decided to opt for the Wordplex style. Bennett was made managing director of Norsk UK, and Ulf Gustafsson was sent back home to Oslo.
First of all, let's just establish why I was made managing director of Norsk Data. As some of you will know, the previous guy was a very tall, blonde, athletic Norwegian guy. And so the first criteria was they wanted someone similarly tall, blonde and athletic, and hence I came on the scene.
Some thought that Bennett would find it hard to promote the killer instinct in Norsk's dreamy surroundings.
Well, I don't know, we don't kill, we just sort of scientifically bruise. yes, it is a problem. So what we've tended to do is we've moved the guys who are really working at the front line into one of our more modern buildings behind this older building, and we are encouraging that they've got to work on that same sort of committed, aggressive way that everyone in this industry has to work, frankly. And we keep this building very much for customer training, customer visits and demonstrations. It's not the place to idle away the day when you've got a very competitive industry to run.
Some Wordplex managers weren't so lucky. Ian Waterhouse, the Wordplex head of personnel, was sacked and spent much of December looking for a new job. The reason was that Norsk had never had a personnel department and, despite the takeover, didn't believe they needed one. Lars Garström, a vice president of Norsk, was given the job of breaking the bad news.
I don't think he'd had a lot of experience of telling people that they were to lose their job. So when he came into the office and he had a sort of crestfallen look, his tail between his legs, I knew what he wanted to talk to me about. And we very quickly got on from, okay, you've got to go, to what needs to be done and what role I could play over the coming few weeks and months as it transpired.
Those Wordplex staff whom Norsk considered surplus to requirements were paid off and never got as far as the Norsk canteen. 80 of Wordplex's 500 staff left in this way. Ian Waterhouse volunteered to do any sackings himself.
It was quite painful, but I would have felt worse, I think, had I gone on day one and left that to happen in a less structured way than it did. And although it was very painful, and I was very sad to see some excellent people leave the new business, I think it was done better with me there than it would have been done without me there. I had a lot of feelings of sympathy for some of the people who I knew would find it more difficult than others to get a job, often for not very satisfactory reasons. I mean, a guy, frankly, in the computer industry who's 50 would find it difficult to get a job, however competent he was, and there were some very good people in that category.
By the time of the Norsk Data Christmas party, most of the sacking was over. The staff of the two companies began to merge into one under the determined leadership of Steve Bennett. But some former Wordplex staff, like Peter Miles, surprised Norsk by resigning from their new jobs. The fight to keep Wordplex afloat was what had kept the Wordplex staff together and produced Wordplex's distinct culture. Without that fight, many felt that there was nothing to hold them, and that there were bigger and better challenges elsewhere.
Beam me up. Beam me up, Scotty.
I think it was undoubtedly right that the two companies had to shed a lot of people. Between the pair of them, they were massively overstaffed, I think. I think the problem was that perhaps the moves were made on a basis of how many troops do we have, how many do we need, rather than what specific skills are we keeping. Don't forget that Norsk Data bought primarily a company full of people. So it wasn't just the product range they were buying. What they bought was the sales force, the management, and the general people culture. I think that very nearly was destroyed.
The Norsk Data management team, and indeed the Wordplex management team, and indeed the management team of most companies, are not experienced in acquiring other businesses. There's no track record of experience to know how to handle people. And I think having done it once, you learn a lot of lessons, and I suspect that if Norsk Data acquired again, the managers who've been involved in the acquisition of Wordplex would probably do a lot of things differently and better.
One year after the struggle for Wordplex began, some sort of order is finally returning to its business. Norsk has now moved the help desk out of Slough and into a functional building in Newbury.
And what's the equipment you have a problem with?
The newly trained recruits are subject to a strict, no-nonsense regime.
Generally,
everybody has to switch off from what else they're doing and concentrate immediately on the phone call in hand. People will be talking to somebody from the outside world, and at that stage they have to present an image of complete calm and control, which I hope gets projected outside here.
Much to the relief of Wordplex's customers, like Linda Ralph of TSB Trust Company, Norsk's approach seems to produce results.
Now our calls get through a lot quicker because they actually go through a switchboard at Norsk Data. The information that they're giving us is a lot better. They seem to be able to get the information to us very quickly.
Due to a decline in sales outside Europe, Norsk's share price hasn't been performing too well. But Norsk UK has managed to hold on to most of Wordplex's customers and is recruiting staff to deal with the increased workload. Most of the Wordplex staff who left during the takeover are now in new jobs. Peter Miles left to work for a company run by a former colleague from Wordplex. Dr. Jeff Bristow moved on to try to save yet another computer company, Compsoft in Godalming. This time his strategy went through as planned. Ian Waterhouse soon got another job and is now Director of Personnel for the International Products Division of British Telecom. Most of the help desk staff found similar jobs with other companies in Slough, a couple of them as supervisors. But Leslie Miles has still not found employment which will enable her to look after her son and bring home a pay packet.
How do you feel about the takeover now? Do you think it was a good or a bad thing?
Possibly a good thing in the long term, because I don't think the company could have survived on its own for very much longer. I mean, there were, I suppose, money is the main problem, and it would have been sad to have seen the company go under when it had a good product and it had very good people working for it. And I think that in the end, I think it was the right thing to happen.